I brought a brand new car to the party for my daughter, as a birthday surprise. But when the party was ending, I went out to the backyard and saw her mother-in-law behind the wheel and her husband teaching his mother how to drive. Then my daughter Jessica got up from the table right at that moment and did nothing. Absolutely nothing. She just stood there, watching, as if I didn't exist, as if my sacrifice was worth nothing. That was 3 hours ago. I can still feel the chill of that moment running down my spine. I can still see the smile on Brenda's face, the mother of Ryan, my son-in-law, sitting in the driver's seat. I can still hear her laugh. A sharp, annoying laugh that cut right through me like a knife. My name is Eleanor. I am 69 years old. And I have just understood something I should have understood a long, long time ago. To my own daughter, I am nothing more than a resource. A wallet with legs. An old woman who is still good for something. Paying bills, giving cars, keeping mouths shut. But they didn't know that I already had everything prepared. The party started at 6 o'clock in the evening. 40 people in the backyard of Jessica's house, my daughter. Pink balloons hanging from the trees. Tables decorated with cream-colored tablecloths. Soft music coming from the speakers. Everything seemed perfect. Everything seemed normal. I arrived at 5:30. I was wearing a discreet olive green dress, the one I always wear for family events. No one greeted me at the door. No one asked if I needed help carrying my purse. I walked in alone. I sat alone. I waited alone. Jessica was busy attending to the guests. Ryan, her husband, was talking to her cousins near the barbecue grill. Brenda, her mother-in-law, was sitting in the center of the main table as if she were the hostess, as if it were her house, as if it were her party. I watched everything from the corner. I've always been good at observing. Quiet, but attentive. For years I learned to stay silent, to not be a bother, to not ask for space. I learned that my place was on the sidelines, that my value was in what I could give, not in what I could do. 30 minutes passed before Jessica approached me. She had a glass of wine in her hand. She gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. She asked if I was comfortable. I said yes. She smiled. An automatic, empty smile, the kind given out of obligation. Then she went back to the others. Ryan didn't even look at me. At 7 o'clock, when everyone was seated and eating, I stood up and asked for everyone's attention. The noise died down. The conversation stopped. Everyone turned to look at me. I felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes on me. I took a deep breath. I took the keys out of my purse. The keys to the car, a brand new car, silver, that cost me $22,000. $22,000 that I saved for 3 years. $22,000 that came from my pension, from my odd jobs, from my sleepless nights wondering if my daughter would ever look at me the way she used to. I walked toward Jessica. I held out the keys. Her eyes widened in surprise. Everyone applauded. There were shouts of excitement. Someone said, "What a generous mother." Another said, "Jessica, you're so lucky." She took the keys. She hugged me. A short, cold, calculated hug. Then she turned to Ryan and showed him the keys. He smiled. That smile that has always given me chills. That smile that hides something dark. Brenda got up from the table and walked toward them. She took the keys from Jessica's hands without asking permission. She said something in a low voice. Ryan nodded. The three of them went out to the backyard, where the car was parked. I just stood there, watching them walk away. No one else seemed to notice. Everyone kept eating, laughing, drinking, as if nothing had happened, as if I no longer mattered. I waited 5 minutes, 10, 15. Then, calmly, I left my plate on the table and walked toward the backyard. My steps were slow, measured. I felt my heart beating fast, but my face remained serene. When I got to the backyard, I saw it, the silver car, shining in the afternoon light. And there, sitting in the driver's seat, was Brenda. Ryan was beside her, leaning in, explaining how the controls worked. Jessica was standing by the passenger door, watching, smiling, as if this were the most normal thing in the world. Brenda turned the steering wheel. She pressed the accelerator gently. She laughed. She said something I couldn't quite hear. Ryan laughed too. Jessica remained silent, but she did nothing to stop them. I stood there, motionless, observing them. No one noticed my presence. No one turned to look at me. No one asked what I was doing there. I was invisible, transparent, non-existent. Then something inside me broke. It wasn't an explosion. It was a silent, deep, definitive crack, like a fissure in glass that has endured too much pressure for too long. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I simply turned around and went back to the party. I sat down in my spot. I took a sip of water. I folded my hands in my lap, and I waited. I waited for them to come back. I waited for them to sit down. I waited for them to keep pretending that everything was fine, because I already knew the truth, and they were about to find it out too. It wasn't always like this. There was a time when Jessica looked at me with different eyes. There was a time when I was her whole world, and she was mine. She was born on a Tuesday in October, 35 years ago. She weighed 7 pounds, 1 ounce. She had dark eyes, like her father, black, curly, rebellious hair. From the first moment I held her in my arms, I knew I would do anything for her, whatever it took. No limits, no conditions. Her father, Richard, died when she was 7 years old. An accident at the factory where he worked. A poorly secured beam. A split second of distraction. And suddenly, I was left alone, a widow at 36 years old, with a little girl and no backup plan. I didn't have time to grieve the way I wanted to. I didn't have time to fall apart. I had a daughter to feed, to clothe, to educate. So I worked. I worked any job I could find, cleaning offices in the mornings, doing laundry in the afternoons, cooking in other people's homes on the weekends. I slept 4 hours a night, sometimes less. Jessica never knew how many meals I skipped so she could have hers. She never knew how many times I wore broken shoes for months so I could buy her new ones. She never knew I sold the few pieces of jewelry I had, the ones Richard had given me, to pay for her private school. I wanted her to have what I never had. Opportunities, education, a better future. I wanted her to be someone, to not depend on anyone, to never have to kneel before life as I had. And she did it. She graduated from college. She got a good job at a graphic design firm. She earned good money. She lived well. She was independent, strong, self-assured. I was proud. So proud that sometimes my chest ached with emotion. But then Ryan appeared. She met him at a work conference. He was a tech equipment salesman. Talkative, charming, with that false confidence of men who need to impress in order to exist. At first, he seemed polite, kind. He brought me flowers when he came to visit her. He asked me how I was. He treated me with respect. But I saw something in his eyes. Something cold. Something calculating. A look that assessed, that measured, that looked for weaknesses. I told Jessica to be careful, to not rush things, to get to know him better before making big decisions. She got upset. She told me I was distrustful, that I was always looking for problems where there were none, that Ryan was a good man and that I should give him a chance. So I kept quiet. I swallowed my doubts. I smiled when I was supposed to smile. I nodded when I was supposed to nod. They got married a year later. The wedding cost $8,000. I paid for half of it. I sold my old car to do it. Jessica didn't ask where I got the money. She just accepted it, as if it were my obligation, as if it were the natural thing to do. After the wedding, everything changed. Slowly, but constantly. Like a silent disease that progresses without you noticing, the calls became less frequent, the visits sporadic. The Sunday lunches, which used to be sacred, were canceled with vague excuses. "We have plans, Mom." "We're busy, Mom." "Another day, Mom." Ryan always had a reason. A work commitment, a family gathering on his side, a last-minute trip, and Jessica followed him. She always followed him. Then I met Brenda, Ryan's mother, a 66-year-old woman. Hair dyed mahogany, long nails painted dark red, expensive clothes that screamed money they didn't have. She spoke loudly, laughed louder, and treated Jessica as if she were her employee. The first time I saw her, we were at a restaurant celebrating Jessica's birthday. Brenda arrived late, sat down without apologizing, and began to complain about everything. The food was cold. The service was slow. The table was in a bad spot. Jessica apologized for things that weren't her fault. Ryan laughed as if it were all a joke. I tried to make conversation. I asked Brenda about her family, about her work. She looked at me with disdain. She answered me in monosyllables. Then she turned to Jessica and started talking to her, as if I wasn't even there. That night, on the way home, I felt a weight in my stomach, a sense of danger, of threat. Like when an animal senses something bad is about to happen. The months passed. Things got worse. Jessica stopped asking me how I was. She stopped being interested in my life. When we talked, it was always about her problems, her needs, her money. Because yes, she started asking for money. At first, it was small amounts. $100 here, $200 there. It's just a loan, Mom. I'll pay you back next month. She never paid it back. Then the amounts grew. $500 for a car repair. $1,000 for a credit card debt. $2,000 for some legal problem of Ryan's that I never quite understood. I paid. I always paid. Because she was my daughter. Because I thought that if I helped her, she would go back to being the little girl who hugged me before bed. The teenager who asked me for advice. The young woman who told me I was her hero. But she never came back. At some point, I stopped being her mother. I became her bank, her solution, her emergency resource. And now, sitting at this party, watching her mother-in-law drive the car I gave her, I understand with painful clarity that I lost my daughter a long time ago. The question is, when exactly did she stop loving me? Was it gradual, or was there a specific moment? Was it my fault for giving too much? Or was it their fault for teaching her to take without giving thanks? I don't know, and maybe it doesn't matter anymore. What matters now is what I'm going to do about it. 3 months before the party, I found something I shouldn't have seen. It was a Saturday morning. Jessica had asked me to go to her house to pick up some boxes of old clothes she was supposedly going to donate. She said she'd be out all day, that the boxes were in the guest room, that I should take what I needed. I arrived early. I rang the doorbell. No one answered. I used the key she had given me years ago, the one I was never sure if I should keep or return. I went inside. The house was silent, empty, cold. I went straight to the guest room. The boxes were there, stacked against the wall. But when I tried to move them, one of them tipped over. The contents spilled onto the floor. Clothes, shoes, papers. Lots of papers. I bent down to pick them up. I didn't want to leave a mess. I didn't want Jessica to think I had been snooping. But then I saw something. A manila envelope, open, with my name written on the top. My heart started beating faster. I pulled out the documents. They were copies of the deed. To my house. The house where I lived. The one Richard and I bought 30 years ago. The house that was the only thing that truly belonged to me. The deeds were marked up, underlined. With handwritten notes in the margins, I recognized Ryan's handwriting. Estimated value, $95,000. No mortgage. In the name of Eleanor Graham. There were more papers, bank statements, mine. I didn't understand how they had gotten them. There were red circles around the amounts, my savings, my monthly pension. Everything recorded, everything calculated. And then I saw something worse. A printed conversation. Messages between Ryan and Brenda, dated 2 weeks earlier. Ryan, the old woman has more than we thought. The house is worth almost $100,000, and she still has savings. Brenda, then we have to speed things up. Jessica has to convince her to put the house in her name. For security, she should tell her. Ryan, I already tried. She's resisting. She says she wants to maintain her independence. Brenda, well, insist. Or find another way. We can't wait for her to die. We need that money now. The words stabbed into my chest like shards of glass. I read the message once, twice, 3 times. It hurt more each time. I kept reading. There were more messages. Many more. Jessica, my mom asked why we need so much money lately. Ryan, tell her anything. That it's an investment? That it's for our future? Whatever. Just get her off our backs. Jessica, I feel bad lying to her. Brenda, don't be stupid. She's lived her life. Now it's your turn. That money should be yours anyway. Jessica, you're right. It's just that sometimes. Ryan. Sometimes what? Don't tell me you're having second thoughts. Jessica, no, I just mean we should be more careful. I don't want her to suspect anything. I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking. The paper crumpled in my fingers. I felt nauseous. I felt rage. I felt an emptiness so deep, I thought it would swallow me whole. My daughter, my own daughter. She knew what they were doing. She wasn't just aware of it, she was participating, accepting, justifying. I sat on the floor, right there, surrounded by papers and lies. I didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. It was as if my body had forgotten how. I just sat there, staring at the wall, trying to process what I had just discovered. How long had they been planning this? Months? Years? Was every loan they'd asked for part of the plan? Every canceled visit? Every ignored call? I thought about all the times Jessica had told me she loved me. I thought about all the gifts I had given her. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made. And I wondered if any of it had ever been real. If it had ever meant anything to her. I gathered the papers. I folded them carefully and put them in my purse. Then I put everything back as it was. I closed the box. I left the house. I locked the door. I walked to the bus stop. On the way home, my mind was racing. Options, possibilities, strategies. Because one thing was clear. I couldn't confront them. Not yet. If I did it now, if I told them I knew the truth, they would find another way to trick me. They would be more careful, more discreet. No. I needed time. I needed to think. I needed a plan. That night, in my house, alone in the dark, I took out the papers and read them again, this time calmly, coldly, as if they were documents about a stranger, as if they weren't talking about my life, my family, my broken heart. And then something changed inside me. It wasn't a moment of enlightenment. It was something darker, more profound. A decision that forms in the parts of you that you never knew existed. If they saw me as a source of money, then I would give them what they expected. I would continue to be the generous mother, the naive old woman, the easily manipulated woman. But while they played their game, I would play mine. And when the time came, when I had all the pieces in place, I would teach them something they had clearly forgotten. That underestimating a quiet woman is the most dangerous mistake anyone can make. I called Grace that same night. My only true friend. The only person I could still trust. I need your help, I told her, and I need you to not ask questions just yet. She answered without hesitation. Tell me what you need. And that's how it all began. The plan, the revenge, the justice, or maybe, simply, my liberation. Grace arrived at my house the next day. She brought coffee and donuts, as if it were a normal visit. But when I closed the door and showed her the papers, her face changed. I saw her turn pale. I saw her clench her jaw. I saw her transform from a sympathetic friend to a fierce ally in seconds. Sons of bitches, she said, and she didn't apologize for the language. I didn't ask her to. We sat at the kitchen table. I spread all the documents out in front of us. The messages, the bank statements, the marked up deeds. It was all there. The complete evidence of a calculated, cold, systematic betrayal. Grace read every paper carefully. Then she looked at me with those gray eyes that had always seemed capable of seeing past the lies. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't know, I answered. And it was true. The rage had given me clarity, but not direction. I knew I couldn't stay still. I knew I couldn't pretend nothing had happened, but I didn't know how to proceed. I do, Grace said. You need to protect yourself. Legally, financially, emotionally. And you need to do it now. She was right. Of course she was right. But something inside me resisted. There was still a tiny piece of maternal hope clinging to the possibility that this was a misunderstanding. That Jessica didn't really know how serious it was. That I could still save her. Grace must have seen the doubt on my face because she took my hand and squeezed it hard. Eleanor, she said, listen to me closely. Your daughter is robbing you. Not just of money. She's robbing you of your dignity, your respect, the years you have left. And if you don't do something now, she is going to leave you with nothing. Do you understand? I nodded. Because I did understand. Because deep down, beyond the denial and the pain, I already knew it. That same afternoon, Grace took me to see a lawyer. His name was Michael Roth. He had a small office downtown. He was a man in his 50s, serious, with thick glasses and a way of speaking that conveyed confidence without arrogance. I told him everything. I showed him the documents. I explained the situation. He listened without interrupting. He took notes in a yellow legal pad. He nodded from time to time. At the end, when I finished, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. Mrs. Graham, he said, you are in a vulnerable position. If they have access to your bank information, if they know the value of your properties, if they are planning to manipulate you legally, we need to act fast. What can I do? I asked. First, protect your asset. Change bank passwords. Revoke any power of attorney you might have signed. Make sure no one but you has access to your accounts. Second, document everything. Every loan they've asked for, every broken promise, every suspicious message. Third, prepare a new will that reflects your true wishes, not what they expect. I felt dizzy. It was too much information, too many decisions, too fast. And there's one more thing, Michael continued. If you really want to understand how far this goes, if you want to know exactly what they're planning, you'll need professional help. Someone who can investigate without raising suspicion. A detective? Grace asked. Exactly. 2 days later, I met Frank Doyle, a private investigator, an ex-cop, a 62-year-old man with a weathered face and a gaze that missed no details. He worked from a small office that smelled like old coffee and paper. I explained what I needed. I wanted to know everything about Ryan, his finances, his debts, his business dealings. I wanted to know if Brenda was involved in other scams. I wanted to know if Jessica was really an accomplice or just a manipulated victim. Frank took the case. He charged me $1,500 up front. He said he would have results in 3 weeks. In the meantime, I had to keep acting normal. I had to see Jessica, talk to her, pretend that nothing had changed. I had to smile when she called. I had to accept her excuses when she canceled plans. I had to keep being the naive mother they thought I was. It was the hardest performance of my life. Jessica called me a few days later. She needed money again. $800 to repair the refrigerator. I said yes. I transferred the money without questions. She thanked me briefly and hung up. I wrote down the transaction in a notebook. Date, amount, reason, everything recorded. I changed all my passwords. I opened a new account at a different bank. I transferred half of my savings there. I left enough in the old account so they wouldn't get suspicious, but not enough that they could do real damage. I visited a notary. I updated my will. In the previous version, Jessica inherited everything. In the new one, she would only inherit a fraction. The rest would go to charitable institutions, to nursing homes, to organizations that helped elderly women abandoned by their families. The notary asked if I was sure. I told him I had never been more sure of anything in my life. 3 weeks later, Frank summoned me to his office. He had a thick folder, brown, full of papers, photographs, screenshots. He sat across from me. He opened the folder, and he began to speak. Ryan had debts, lots of debts, maxed out credit cards, unpaid personal loans. He had even borrowed money from loan sharks. He owed more than $40,000 in total. Brenda was worse. She had a history of minor scams. She had been sued twice by tenants she had tried to cheat out of their deposits. She had worked in pyramid schemes. She had restraining orders from 12 partners of her other children. And Jessica knew everything. The messages between her and Ryan were clear. She knew about the debts. She knew the plan was to use my money to pay them off. She knew they were lying to me, and she had decided it was okay, that I had lived long enough, that my money was more useful in their hands than in mine. Frank showed me photographs of the 3 of them meeting in coffee shops. in restaurants, planning. There were audio recordings of phone conversations where they talked about me as if I were a problem to be solved. Un obstacle, à nuisance. I'm sorry, Frank said. I know this isn't what you were hoping to hear. But he was wrong. It was exactly what I was hoping to hear. Because deep down, I already knew. I just needed confirmation. I just needed proof. Is this enough to protect me legally? I asked. More than enough, he replied. I paid the rest of his fee. I took the folder. I left that office with something I hadn't felt in months. Control. That night, alone at home, I opened the folder again. I looked at the photographs of my daughter, my beautiful daughter, the child I had held in my arms, the teenager I had comforted during her first heartbreak, the woman I had applauded on her graduation day, and I felt nothing. Just a cold emptiness where love used to be. I closed the folder. I put it in a safe place, and I began to plan Jessica's birthday party, the party that would change everything, the party where they would finally stop underestimating me. The car was Grace's idea. We were sitting in my living room one Tuesday afternoon, reviewing options. I wanted something decisive, something that would make it clear who they really were, but I didn't know how to do it without seeming vengeful, without seeming cruel, without seeming like the villain of my own story. You need to give them exactly what they expect, Grace said. You need to be the generous mother one last time, so generous they can't resist, so generous that they trust you completely. And then? I asked. Then you take it all away at once, in front of witnesses. So they can't deny it, so everyone sees who they really are. I thought about her words for days. Give them what they expect. Be generous. Too generous. So generous they would let their guard down completely. And then it occurred to me, Jessica's birthday was in 2 months. She was turning 36. She had always wanted a new car. She mentioned it constantly. She complained that hers was old, noisy, unreliable. What better gift than a car? What better bait? I went to 3 different dealerships. I looked at models. I asked for prices. I did the math. Finally, I chose one. Silver. 4-door. Brand new. $22,000. It was almost everything I had left in accessible savings. But it didn't matter, because it wasn't really a gift. It was an investment. The most important investment of my life. I signed the papers. I paid in cash. The salesman looked at me with surprise. Few women my age bought cars like that. So quickly, so decisively. I told him it was for my daughter, that I wanted to surprise her. He smiled and congratulated me on being such a good mother. If he had known the truth, he probably wouldn't have smiled. The car would be ready in a week. In the meantime, I had to organize the party. And here came the delicate part. I had to do it in a way that seemed natural. I couldn't be the one organizing everything. That would raise suspicions. I had to make Jessica believe it was her idea. I called her one Sunday afternoon. I told her I felt bad for not having seen her much lately. That I wanted to do something special for her birthday. Something big. Something memorable. You don't have to do anything, Mom, she said. But her voice sounded interested, curious. I know I don't have to, I replied. But I want to. Let me throw a party at your house. Invite whomever you want. I'll take care of everything. The food, the drinks, the decorations. Just tell me how many people. There was a silence. I could hear her thinking. Calculating. Surely wondering how much money she could get out of this. Are you sure? She finally asked. Completely sure. Well, if you insist. It would be about 40 people. Is that okay? Perfect. We hung up. I smiled. The hook was set. Over the next few weeks, I became the perfect mother. I called Jessica every other day to ask about party details. What food did she want? What music? What kind of decorations? She gave her opinions. I wrote them all down. I made her feel important, heard, loved. I hired a catering service. I chose the most expensive menu. Shrimp, grilled steaks, gourmet salads, imported desserts. $1,200 just for food. I hired a DJ. $300 for 4 hours. I bought decorations. Balloons, tablecloths, centerpieces, lights, another $200. In total, the party cost me almost $3,000. Added to the car, it was $25,000. Practically all my liquid assets. But every dollar spent brought me closer to my goal, and the goal was priceless. Michael, the lawyer, helped me with the legal part. We prepared documents, certificates, proof, everything I would need for the final moment. We kept it in a black folder that I carried with me at all times. Frank installed discreet cameras in Jessica's house. Small, almost invisible, strategically placed in the backyard, on the patio, in the living room. Jessica wouldn't notice them. No one would notice them, but they would record everything. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Frank asked me when he finished the installation. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. Grace helped me rehearse. Yes, rehearse, as if it were a play. We practiced what I would say, how I would say it, the tone of voice, the posture. It had to be perfect, calm, controlled. No tears, no shouting, no emotions that could be used against me. "You have to be ice," Grace said. "No matter what they say, no matter how they react, you are ice." I practiced in front of the mirror, over and over, until my face showed nothing, until my voice didn't tremble, until I could say the most painful words with the same calmness I used to order coffee. 3 days before the party, Jessica called me. She sounded excited, almost euphoric. "Mom, you don't know how much I appreciate everything you're doing. Really. I know I haven't always been the best daughter, but I want you to know that I love you very much." The words cut through me like knives. Because she sounded sincere. Because for a second, just 1 second, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that maybe there was a chance this was all a misunderstanding, that we could still fix this. But then I remembered the messages, the secret meetings, the conversations where they called me the old woman, where they talked about my death as if it were a convenient solution. "I love you too, honey," I said. And it wasn't a complete lie, because I still loved the little girl she had been. I still loved the memory of who she could have been. I just no longer loved the woman she had become. The day before the party, I went to pick up the car. It shone in the Sunday perfect, new, expensive. The salesman handed me the keys with a smile. "Your daughter is very lucky," he said. "Yes," I replied. "She is." I drove the car to a parking lot near Jessica's house. I left it there, covered with a tarp. No one would see it until the exact moment. Until I decided it was time. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, going over the plan again and again. Every step, every detail, every possible reaction. Grace had told me I could still stop, that I could still cancel everything, that I could still forgive, but I didn't want to forgive anymore. Forgiveness was for those who repented, and they didn't repent. They only regretted not having been faster, more efficient, more discreet. I got out of bed. I looked in the mirror. I saw a 69-year-old woman, wrinkles around her eyes, gray hair, tired hands. But I also saw something else. I saw determination. I saw strength. I saw someone who no longer had anything to lose. "Tomorrow," I said to myself out loud, "tomorrow everything changes." And so it did. The day arrived with a clear sky. No clouds, no rain. As if the universe had decided that nothing would interfere with what was about to happen. I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning, not from the alarm, but because my body could no longer pretend to sleep. I had spent the entire night in that state, between wakefulness and sleep, where thoughts mix with nightmares and you don't know what's real. I showered. I got dressed carefully. The olive green dress, the one I always wore for family events. The same one I had worn to dozens of birthdays, graduations, celebrations. I wanted everything to seem normal. I wanted no one to suspect that this time was different. I put on light makeup, a little powder, a touch of coral-colored lipstick, nothing exaggerated, just enough to not look sick, to not raise unnecessary questions. At 9 o'clock, Grace arrived at my house. She brought coffee and a long, silent hug that said more than 1,000 words. "Are you ready?" she asked. "No," I answered honestly, "but I'm going to do it anyway." We went over the plan one last time. Every step, every moment. Grace would be at the party, but as a normal guest. She couldn't look like my accomplice. She couldn't raise suspicions. Her job was to observe, record discreetly with her phone from different angles, and be ready to intervene only if something went terribly wrong. Frank would be outside, in his car, monitoring the hidden cameras, recording everything, making sure we had evidence of every second, every word, every reaction. Michael would be available by phone, with all the legal documents ready, prepared to act if necessary. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I drove to the parking lot where I had left the car. I uncovered it. It was still shining, perfect, immaculate, the most expensive trap I had ever set in my life. I drove it to Jessica's house. I arrived at 5:30, half an hour before the party officially started. I parked the car on the street, far from the house, still partially covered. No one would see it until I wanted them to. I walked to the entrance. I rang the doorbell. Jessica opened the door. She was wearing an ivory-colored dress. She looked beautiful, radiant, happy. She hugged me. A brief, superficial hug, but enough for any observer to think we were a normal mother and daughter. "Mom, thanks for coming early. Can you help me with a few things?" "Of course." I entered the house. The smell of freshly prepared food filled the air. The catering service had arrived early. Everything was arranged in the kitchen: covered trays, stacked plates, shining glasses. Ryan was in the backyard, arranging the tables. He saw me and nodded. Not even a verbal greeting, just that minimal gesture, as if I were part of the furniture, as if my presence was so insignificant it didn't deserve words. Brenda arrived 15 minutes later. She walked in without knocking. She greeted Jessica effusively, hugged her, gave her a gift wrapped in gold paper, large, ostentatious, probably empty inside, like her. She glanced at me, didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was, just sized me up with those cold, calculating eyes, and walked right past. I took a deep breath. Ice. I had to be ice. The guests started arriving at 6 o'clock. Jessica's cousins, co-workers, neighbors, friends I hadn't seen in years. Everyone brought gifts. Everyone smiled. Everyone acted as if this were a genuine celebration and not the scene of an execution. I sat in my assigned seat, a corner of the main table, not in the center, not near Jessica, on the edge, where older people are placed when they no longer matter, but still have to be present out of obligation. Grace arrived at 6:15. She looked at me from afar. An almost imperceptible gesture. Everything is ready. Everything is working. The cameras are recording. The food was served at 6:30. Shrimp, steak, salads. Exactly as I had ordered. The guests ate. They laughed. They chatted. The music played in the background. Everything was perfect on the surface. Everything was rotten underneath. At 7 o'clock, when everyone was seated, eating, relaxed, I stood up. I felt all eyes turn to me. I felt the weight of 40 pairs of eyes waiting, wondering what the old woman would say, what sentimental speech the doting mother would give. I took a deep breath. I took the keys out of my purse. The keys to the car. Shiny. New. With the silver keychain engraved with the brand's logo, I walked toward Jessica. Slowly. Every step measured. Every movement calculated. The silence grew deeper. The music seemed to quiet down. Or maybe it was just my perception. Maybe the whole world had paused to witness this moment. I arrived in front of her. I held out the keys. I held them in the air between us. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said. My voice sounded calm, controlled, devoid of emotion. "I hope this gift serves you well." Jessica's eyes widened. She looked at the keys. Then she looked at me. Confusion, surprise, disbelief. "Mom, what is this?" "A car. Brand new, silver. It's parked outside. It's yours." The silence broke. Applause. Shouts of surprise. Someone said, "What an incredible mother!" Another said, "Jessica, you are so lucky." Jessica took the keys. Her hands were trembling. She hugged me. This time the hug was longer, tighter, almost desperate. "Thank you, Mom. I don't know what to say. It's too much." "Nothing is too much for you," I replied. The words came out mechanically, rehearsed. "Perfect." Ryan approached. He took the keys from Jessica's hands. He examined them. He smiled. That smile. That damn smile that had always given me chills. "Let's go see it," he said. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. Jessica nodded. Brenda got up from her chair. The three of them walked toward the door. Outside. Toward the car. I just stood there, watching them walk away, feeling everyone else return to their conversations, to their food, to their indifference. I waited 5 minutes, 10, 15. No one noticed they had been gone too long. No one asked what they were doing. Everyone was busy enjoying the food I had paid for, the party I had organized, the generosity I had shown. Then I stood up. I left my napkin on the table. I walked toward the backyard. Slowly, without rushing, as if I were just going to get some fresh air. But I knew exactly what I was going to find, because I had planned it, because I had foreseen it, because I knew these people better than they knew themselves. I reached the backyard, and there it was. The scene I had imagined hundreds of times, the scene I had awaited with a mixture of horror and anticipation. Brenda was sitting behind the wheel of the car. Ryan was leaning in, teaching her the controls, pointing at the dashboard, explaining how the sound system worked. Jessica was standing nearby, watching, smiling, as if this were the most natural thing in the world, as if the car belonged to all of them, as if I didn't exist, as if my sacrifice meant nothing. I stood there, motionless, observing them. The hidden cameras were recording. Grace's phone was recording. Every second was being documented. Every word, every gesture, every betrayal. Brenda turned the steering wheel. She laughed. That sharp, unbearable laugh. Ryan laughed too. Jessica remained silent, but she did nothing to stop them. She didn't say, "Wait, my mother gave this car to me." She didn't say, "This isn't right." She said nothing. And in that moment, something inside me closed for good. The last door. The last hope. The last shred of maternal love. I turned around. I went back to the party. I sat in my spot. I took a sip of water. I folded my hands in my lap. And I waited. I waited for them to come back. I waited for them to sit down. I waited for them to keep pretending, because now came the final part. The part they had been waiting for without knowing it. The part where they would finally see who I really was. They came back 20 minutes later. The three of them. Jessica with her cheeks flushed with excitement. Ryan with that satisfied smirk of someone who just got exactly what he wanted. Brenda with a glint in her eyes that turned my stomach. They sat in their seats. Jessica raised her glass for a toast. "To my mother," she said. "To the most generous person I know." Everyone raised their glasses. Everyone toasted. Everyone drank. And I smiled. A small, controlled smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Thank you," I said simply. The party continued. Dessert was served. Chocolate cake with strawberries. $300 from a fancy bakery. Jessica blew out the candles. Everyone sang. Everyone clapped. Everything was so normal. So perfect. So fake. At 8:30, as the sun began to set and the garden lights switched on automatically, I stood up again. This time I wasn't holding keys. I was holding my phone. And on my phone, I had something far more valuable than a $22,000 car. I had the truth. I walked to the center of the backyard, where everyone could see me, where no one could ignore me. I raised my hand for silence. The DJ lowered the music. The conversation stopped. Everyone turned to look at me. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," I began. My voice was calm, serene, as if I were about to give a sentimental speech from a proud mother. "It's important for me to share this moment with the people Jessica considers important in her life." Jessica smiled. Ryan nodded. Brenda looked at me with that expression of polite boredom that people have when they're waiting for an older person to finish talking. I have been a mother for 36 years, I continued. And during those years, I have given everything I had. My time, my energy, my money, my love, everything. Because that's what mothers do. They give without expecting anything in return. Some people nodded. Others smiled tenderly. Grace watched me from her table. Her eyes said, "Go on. I'm here. You're not alone." But recently, I continued, I discovered something interesting. I discovered that not all people value sacrifices in the same way. Some people see love as an obligation. Others see it as an opportunity. The atmosphere changed, subtly, like when the air grows heavy before a storm. Jessica frowned. Ryan sat up straighter in his chair. Brenda stopped smiling. I took out my phone. I connected it to the sound system the DJ was using. I had practiced this with Grace. I knew exactly how to do it. The DJ looked at me, confused, but didn't object. "I want to share something with you," I said. "Something I found a few months ago. Something I think everyone should hear." I tapped the screen. The first audio recording began to play. Ryan's voice filled the backyard. Clear, unmistakable. "The old woman has more than we thought. The house is worth almost 100,000, and she still has savings." Silence. Absolute silence. As if someone had pressed the pause button on life itself. Then Brenda's voice. "Then we have to speed things up. Jessica has to convince her to put the house in her name." I heard indrawn breaths. Murmurs. Someone said softly, "Oh my God." Jessica stood up. "Mom, what are you doing?" I didn't answer. I tapped the screen again. Another audio file. This time it was Jessica, her own voice betraying her. "I feel bad lying to her." And Brenda responding, "Don't be stupid. She's lived her life. Now it's your turn. That money should be yours anyway." Jessica turned pale. Ryan jumped to his feet. "Turn that off. Now." But I didn't turn anything off. I tapped the screen one more time. The next audio file was a conversation between Ryan and Brenda, more recent. From 2 weeks ago. "If she doesn't die naturally soon, maybe we'll have to help the process along. A nursing home. Somewhere she can't control her money." Brenda laughing. "I like how you think, son." The murmurs turned into stifled gasps. Several people got up from their tables. A woman I didn't know brought her hand to her mouth. An older man shook his head. Grace had her phone out. She was recording everything. The reactions, the faces, the real-time collapse. "Mom, please." Jessica walked toward me. There were tears in her eyes. But I could no longer tell if they were tears of remorse or just shame at being caught. "Let me explain. It's not what it looks like. It's not what it looks like," I repeated. My voice was still calm. "Cold. Ice. Then explain it to me. Explain it to everyone. Explain how for months you planned to steal from me. How you lied to me every time you borrowed money. How you allowed your husband and mother-in-law to talk about my death as if it were a convenient solution. I never wanted. They pressured me. They pressured you," I repeated. "And you gave in. Over and over. Without a second thought. Because it was easier to betray me than to stand up to them." Ryan walked toward me aggressively. "That's enough. This is our house. Get out of here. Now," I laughed. It was a short, dry, humorless laugh. "Your house? This house is in Jessica's name. But do you know what else is in Jessica's name? Nothing. Absolutely nothing else. Because everything she has, every piece of furniture, every appliance, every cent in her bank account, came from loans she asked me for and never paid back. Loans that add up to over $35,000. I pulled papers from my purse. Documents, receipts, bank transfers, all printed, all recorded, all dated and signed. I have proof of every transaction, of every lie, of every manipulation. And now all of you are witnesses." The guests were in shock. Some were muttering among themselves. Others looked at Jessica with expressions of disgust. One of her cousins stood up and left the backyard without a word. Brenda finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous. You're a crazy old woman making things up. No one is going to believe you." I tapped the screen again. This time, it wasn't audio, it was video. recorded by the hidden cameras Frank had installed. The video showed Brenda and Ryan in the kitchen of this very house. It was from 3 weeks ago. I had stopped by to drop off food, and they didn't know I was recording. In the video, Brenda said, "When that old woman becomes too much of a bother, we'll send her to a nursing home and sell her house. Problem solved." Ryan replied, "Jessica has to sign the power of attorney papers first. Without that, we can't do anything." Brenda smiled. "She's almost convinced her. It's just a matter of time." The video stopped. The silence that followed was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Brenda tried to speak. That was taken out of context." "Context?" I interrupted. "What context makes planning to strip someone of their home acceptable?" More people got up. More people left. The party was disintegrating before my eyes, and I remained standing, firm, unwavering. Jessica sank into her chair. She was crying openly now. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. Please, Mom, please." I looked at my daughter, the child I had held in my arms, the teenager I had comforted, the woman who had betrayed every principle I tried to teach her, and I felt nothing, just emptiness. "Your apologies mean nothing," I said, "because you don't regret what you did. You only regret getting caught." Ryan tried to grab my phone. "Give me that." "You have no right." I stepped back. Grace stepped between us. Other guests also moved closer, forming a protective barrier. Frank had entered the backyard, tall, imposing, ready to intervene if necessary. "Don't touch me," I said with a firm voice. "Don't you dare." The backyard was practically empty now. Only about 10 people remained, those closest to Jessica, the ones who wanted to see how this ended. "But this doesn't end here," I said finally. "This is just the beginning, because the best part is still to come." Jessica looked up, confused, scared. "What? What do you mean?" I smiled. A real smile this time. A smile of pure satisfaction. "Wait and see." I took the black folder out of my purse, the one Michael had prepared, the one I had been carrying with me for weeks, waiting for this exact moment. I opened it slowly, deliberately, letting the tension build, letting everyone left in the backyard wonder what else could possibly come after everything they had already witnessed. "For the last 3 months," I began, "while you were planning how to take everything from me, I was busy too. But unlike you, I wasn't planning to steal. I was planning to protect myself." I took out the first document, an official paper with notary seals. "This is my updated will, signed and certified 2 months ago. In the previous version, Jessica inherited everything. My house, my savings, my belongings, everything." Jessica raised her head. There was a flicker of hope in her eyes, as if she thought she could still be saved, as if she believed the right words could undo what she had done. "In this new version," I continued, "Jessica inherits exactly $10,000, not 1 cent more. The rest of my estate, valued at approximately $90,000, will be divided among 3 charitable organizations: homes for abandoned seniors, shelters for elderly women with no family, legal aid centers for victims of financial abuse." Jessica's face crumbled completely. Ryan muttered a curse under his breath. Brenda stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "You can't do that," she shouted. "That's your daughter's inheritance. It's her right." "No," I replied with icy calm. "It's my money. I decide what to do with it. And I've decided it will be more useful helping people who truly need it. People who were betrayed by their own families. People like me." I took out another document. This one was thicker, with more seals, more official. "This is the deed to my house. As you can see, it is still entirely in my name. No mortgage, no liens, no power of attorney whatsoever signed over to anyone." I looked directly at Jessica. 2 months ago, you asked me to sign a power of attorney. You said it was just a precaution, so you could help me if I ever got sick. Remember?" Jessica didn't answer. She just stared at the floor. "I signed that document," I continued. "But what you didn't know is that immediately afterward, I went to my lawyer and had it formally revoked. The power of attorney you think you have is worthless. It's a legally void piece of paper. Ryan approached. His face was red with rage. "You damned old woman. You tricked us." "No," I corrected him. "I protected myself. There's a difference. You tried to trick me. I was simply smarter. I took out more papers, bank statements. I also closed my main bank account, the one you knew about, the one Jessica used as a reference when she needed to know how much money I had available to borrow." Jessica's eyes widened in horror. "What?" "I opened a new account at a different bank. I transferred all my funds there 10 weeks ago. The old account has exactly $500 in it, enough to keep it active, but nothing more. So all the money we thought you had? It's still mine, completely out of your reach, completely protected." Brenda was furious. She was shaking with rage. "You planned all this. You set a trap for us." "Yes," I admitted without remorse. "I did, exactly. Because you underestimated me. You thought I was just a stupid, weak old woman. You thought you could manipulate me without consequences. You were wrong." I took out another document. This one hurt me more than all the previous ones, because it was the most definitive, the most irreversible. "This is a recovery contract for the car I just gave you." The silence was absolute. "What? What do you mean?" Jessica asked, her voice trembling. "The car was never truly yours. I purchased it in the name of a leasing company. It's registered under a special contract that allows me to recover it at any time within the first 72 hours. It's completely legal. My lawyer verified it. I looked at my watch. It has been 3 hours since I gave you the keys, which means I still have 69 hours to exercise my right of recovery." Jessica was speechless. "No, you can't. I thought. You thought it was a genuine gift. And it would have been. If you had shown even a minimum of respect, if you had stopped your mother-in-law from sitting behind the wheel as if it were hers, if you had said something, anything." I took out my phone again. I called a number I already had on speed dial. "Mike, this is Eleanor Graham." "Yes, proceed with the repossession. Send the tow truck to this address. Right now." I hung up. Jessica staggered to her feet. "Mom, no, please. The car. I need it. My old car is about to break down. Please." "You should have thought of that earlier," I replied, emotionless. Grace walked over to me. She touched my shoulder gently. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I nodded. I was more than okay. I was free. I took the last document from the folder. This one was a letter, handwritten, by me, during one of those sleepless nights when I was processing all the pain they had caused me. "This is for you, Jessica," I said, handing her the paper. "Read it when you're alone, when all these people are gone, when Ryan and Brenda are no longer here telling you what to think or what to feel." Jessica took the letter with trembling hands. "What is it?" "It's my goodbye," I replied. "It's everything you needed to hear, but never dared to ask. It's the complete truth. No filters. No pretenses." I turned to leave. Grace followed me. Frank was already at the door, waiting for us. "Where are you going?" Jessica asked, desperate. "You're just leaving? Like this?" I stopped. I turned to look at her one last time. "Yes," I said simply. "I'm leaving. Because I have nothing left to do here. Because you stopped being my daughter. The day you decided my money was worth more than my dignity. But I'm your family." "No," I interrupted. "Family isn't about blood. It's about respect. About genuine love. You are not my family. You stopped being that a long time ago." Ryan took a step toward me. "If you leave now, don't come back. Don't expect Jessica to take you in when you're old and sick and need help." I laughed. A real, liberating laugh. "You think I'm afraid of growing old alone? I am already alone. I've been alone ever since you entered our lives. The difference is that now I accept it, and I prefer it. I prefer honest solitude 1,000 times over than the company of vipers." Brenda spat on the ground. A vulgar, desperate gesture. "You're a bitter old woman. A bitter old woman who's going to die with no one to love her." "Maybe," I replied, "but I will die with dignity, with a clear conscience, knowing I don't owe anyone anything, knowing I didn't let them turn me into a victim. Can you say the same? I didn't wait for an answer. I left the backyard. I left the house. I heard Jessica calling my name. I heard sobs. I heard shouting, but I didn't stop. On the street, the tow truck was already arriving. The driver got out and greeted me. I showed him the papers. He nodded and began to prepare the equipment to take the car. Jessica ran out of the house. "No, please, don't take the car." But it was too late. The car was hooked, lifted, taken away, and with it went the last illusion that anything could be saved between us. I got into Grace's car. Frank got into his own vehicle behind us. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw Jessica kneeling in the street. I saw Ryan screaming. I saw Brenda gesticulating furiously, but I didn't care anymore. They weren't my problem. They weren't my responsibility. They were just strangers I once thought I knew. Grace drove in silence for the first 20 minutes. I looked out the window. The streets passed by. The city lights were beginning to turn on. The sky was gradually darkening, as if the universe were closing one chapter and preparing another. I didn't cry. I thought I would. I had imagined this moment so many times, and in every version, I ended up broken, sobbing, destroyed by the pain of losing my daughter. But I felt none of that. I only felt relief. Like when you finally let go of something heavy you've been carrying for years. Like when you stop pretending it doesn't hurt and admit the truth. "Where do you want to go?" Grace finally asked. "Home," I replied. "For now." She nodded. She knew for now meant something temporary. She knew I had already made bigger decisions. Decisions I hadn't yet shared with anyone. We arrived at my house 40 minutes later. The house Richard and I bought 30 years ago. The house where I raised Jessica. The house full of memories that now felt like ghosts. We went inside. Grace made tea. We sat in the living room. Frank arrived shortly after, with all the recordings backed up on a USB drive. "It's all here," he said, handing me the device. "Every audio file, every video, every piece of proof. Just in case you need anything else in the future." "Thank you," I said, and I put it in a safe place. Because even though I didn't plan on using it again, it was important to have. It was important to know the truth was documented. That it wasn't just my word against theirs. Frank left after a quick cup of coffee. He charged me the rest of his fee. $500. I paid him without hesitation. He had been worth every penny. Grace stayed. She stayed because she knew that even though I wasn't crying, even though I seemed okay, I needed company. I needed a reminder that there were still good people in the world. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. "I'm going to sell the house," I replied. The words came out more easily than I expected. I already spoke to a real estate agent last week. He says I can get $95,000, maybe more. Grace didn't seem surprised. And after that, I'm leaving. Far away. To another city. Maybe another state. I want to start over. In a place where no one knows me as Jessica's mother. Where I can just be Eleanor. A 69-year-old woman who still has time to live her own life. "Alone?" she asked gently. I smiled. "Not exactly. I was thinking maybe you'd want to come with me. If you wanted to? Of course. No pressure. But it would be nice to have company. Good company. From someone who actually values me." Grace didn't answer right away. She took a sip of tea. She looked out the window. Then she looked at me with those gray eyes that always saw the truth. "Yes," she said finally. "Yes, I'll go with you. Because you're more family to me than my own sister. Because you deserve to be happy. Because we still have good years ahead of us." That night, after Grace went home, I sat alone in my room. I opened the drawer of my nightstand. I took out an old photograph. Jessica was 5 years old. We were at the park. She was laughing. I was holding her. We were happy. I looked at that photograph for a long time. I remembered that little girl, that version of my daughter that still existed somewhere in the past. And I allowed myself to feel sadness, not for the woman she became, but for the little girl I lost along the way. Then I put the photograph away. I left it in the drawer. Because some memories are important to keep, but not to carry every day. My phone rang at midnight. It was Jessica. I let it ring. She called 5 more times. I let every call go to voicemail. The next morning, I listened to the messages. Her voice was broken, desperate. "Mom, please. I need to talk to you. I need to explain. It wasn't like you think. Ryan manipulated me. His mother pressured me. I didn't want to hurt you. Please, give me a chance. Just one." I deleted the messages, all of them, because I had already heard enough lies, because I had already given enough chances, because I knew that if I answered, if I opened that door, even a crack, I would fall back into the same cycle, and I wasn't that woman anymore. I was no longer the mother who gave everything without expecting anything. I was no longer the silent victim who accepted crumbs of affection. I was Eleanor Graham, 69 years old, widow, betrayed mother, but above all, a free woman. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. The house sold in 3 weeks for $98,000, $3,000 more than expected. I divided the furniture among charitable organizations. I donated clothes, books, things I no longer needed, things that only took up space and carried memories. Michael handled all the legal paperwork. He made sure Jessica couldn't claim anything, that everything was protected, that my will was ironclad. Grace sold her apartment. She had modest savings. Together, we had enough to buy something small somewhere else, something cozy, something ours. We chose a coastal town, small, quiet, where you could see the ocean from the windows and the air smelled like salt and freedom. The day we left, Jessica showed up at my door. She had lost weight. She had dark circles under her eyes. She looked tired, defeated. "Mom," she said, "please don't leave like this. Give me a chance to fix it." I looked at her. I really looked at her, searching for any trace of the daughter I loved, searching for sincerity, genuine remorse. But I only saw fear, fear of losing access to money, fear of being left alone with the consequences of her actions. Selfish fear, not real love. "Did you read my letter?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes, and I understand why you're angry. But everyone makes mistakes. Everyone deserves a second chance." "I gave you hundreds of chances," I replied. "Every time you lied to me and I believed you. Every time you borrowed money knowing you wouldn't pay it back. Every time you canceled plans with me. Those were chances. And you wasted every single one. But you're my mother." "I was your mother." I corrected her. Past tense. Because being a mother isn't just about giving birth. It's about being present. It's about protecting. It's about loving unconditionally. I did all of that. You didn't. You chose Ryan and Brenda over me, time and time again. That was your choice. Now live with it. "So you're just abandoning me? After everything?" "No," I said with final calm. "You abandoned me first. I'm just accepting the reality you created." Grace came out of the house with the last boxes. She put them in the car. Then she stood beside me, a supportive presence, a reminder that I was not alone. "It's time to go," Grace said softly. I nodded. I looked at Jessica one last time. "I wish you the best," I said. And it was true. I didn't wish her harm. I just wanted her far away from my life. "I hope one day you understand what you lost. Not the money, not the inheritance. But genuine love, that's what you really lost. And you can't get that back with empty apologies." I got in the car. Grace started the engine. As we drove away, I saw Jessica in the rearview mirror, standing on the sidewalk, alone, watching me leave. And I felt no guilt. I felt no remorse. I only felt peace. 5 months later, Grace and I were living in our little house by the sea. We woke up to the sound of the waves. We drank coffee on the terrace. We walked on the beach every afternoon. I made new friends, women my age with similar stories, women who had also been betrayed, abandoned, underestimated, but who had chosen to get back up, to move on, to live. Jessica tried to contact me several more times. Messages, letters, even a package with old photographs, as if that could change anything. I didn't answer any of them, because there was nothing left to say. Because some doors, once closed, must stay that way. One afternoon, sitting on the terrace watching the sunset, Grace asked me, "Do you ever regret it?" I thought about the question. I really thought about it. "No," I replied finally. "I don't regret it. Because for the first time in decades, I'm free. Free from expectations. Free from manipulation. Free from loving people who didn't love me back. And what comes now?" I smiled. "Now, I live. I just live. For me, by me. As it should have been a long time ago." That night, I wrote in my journal, something I hadn't done since I was young. I wrote about everything that had happened, about the pain, about the betrayal, about the liberation, and I finished with one sentence, a sentence that summed up everything I had learned. My name is no longer hers. My story is just beginning. I closed the journal. I looked out at the dark sea. And for the first time in years, I felt whole. Not as a mother, not as a victim, not as a woman who existed to serve others, but as Eleanor. Simply Eleanor. And that was more than enough.